They fined me $900 for painting my porch the wrong shade of cedar, even though the color was on their approved list from 2018. That's how I knew something deeper was rotting under this HOA's rules. Welcome to my channel. I'm Mark from Bend, Oregon. I design structural systems for homes just like yours. If you're new here, I break down real HOA abuse stories and the lawful ways to fight back. Make yourself at home. Maybe hit subscribe if you like hearing how ordinary people stand up to overreach. And tell me where you're watching from. It's always wild to see how far these HOA horror stories travel. I'd been gone 8 months, restoring a cabin my dad built near the valley rim. He passed 3 winters ago, but I still remember his voice echoing off those beams. Keep it honest, son. Keep it yours. When I came back, the air smelled like pine and old varnish, just how he left it. The porch light still worked, the same gravel crunch under my boots. But there was one new thing, a neon orange violation notice nailed to the door. Unapproved structure extension, it read, citing Section 4.3c of the HOA's design covenant. No signature, just the initials HM. The board president, Helen Meyer. I hadn't extended a thing. The only addition was a repaired gutter, exact same dimensions, 28 feet, measured and logged. But that's how it starts. One slip of paper, one false claim. Then the snowball. They gave me 10 days to restore compliance or face daily fines of $150. I called Helen's office. She didn't pick up. Instead, a voicemail from community enforcement warned that further resistance may trigger lien escalation. That word, lien, snapped something in me. My father's deed was clean, paid off in 2002. No board was going to smear its title. That night, I sat at the cabin table with a single bulb buzzing overhead and reread every line of the HOA's covenants. Sigh. 68 pages of vague language, cross-references, and amendments nobody ever voted on. I found 4 contradictions before midnight. My pulse steadied, the engineer in me taking over. Systems fail where they hide their assumptions. I called my neighbor and friend, Tony Delgado, retired mail carrier, ex-Marine, and the only man who ever stared Helen down at a meeting. "They're pushing liens again?" he asked, his voice gravelly through the static. "They tried that on me last spring, claimed my flagpole exceeded height limits by 8 inches. I measured it. It's exactly 20 feet. Selective enforcement?" I said. "Selective's their middle name," he laughed. "I've got every letter they sent me in a binder. You want copies?" By the next morning, I had a cardboard box full of those letters. Fines for mailbox paint, warnings for a child's bicycle left on a porch, even a noise violation at 6:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. Same signature block, same initials, HM Knowledge Nugget number 1. Under most state common interest statutes, an HOA can't levy fines or liens without prior notice and a verified hearing opportunity. If they skip either, every fine downstream is voidable. I decided to test their system. I filed a certified letter citing Oregon Revised Statutes, Bar 94.6301, L, requesting evidence of an authorized board vote for my alleged violation. Under the law, they had 14 days to respond. On day 10, instead of proof, I got a second notice. Unauthorized construction persists. Fine now $1,500. They were digging their own hole. That evening, Tony and I walked the boundary fence, counting the new HOA patrol signs. 5 total, all installed last month without community vote. His flashlight beam caught a reflective sticker on the nearest SUV parked down the road. "They're running private security now," he muttered. "We used to have volunteers." The chill in his tone match. And the mountain air. I looked back at my father's cabin, silhouette against the valley's dusk. The windows glowed warm, but inside, my gut felt cold. The place he built to escape bureaucracy had become its target. I whispered to myself, if they want a hearing, I'll give them one they'll never forget. The next morning, I drove into town with a thermos of burnt diner coffee and a folder of notes. The county clerk's office sat behind a peeling blue sign that read, Deschutes County Recorder, Public Records, Title Division. Inside, the air smelled like toner and dust. I handed over my parcel number, 2709453200, and asked for the latest filing connected to the HOA's corporate name. The clerk, a silver-haired woman with ink on her cuffs, typed for a long minute and frowned. Interesting, she said. There's a quitclaim filed 6 months ago transferring utility easement rights for your street to an LLC out of Portland. Silverpine Holdings, LLC. Ring any bells? I told her it didn't, but my heart thudded. Easement rights meant control over water and access, the very veins of the neighborhood. Can I get a copy? I asked. She printed it, stamped it in blue ink, and slid it under the glass. The signature at the bottom read, Helen Meyer, HOA President, notarized by a local broker I knew had a pending ethics complaint. So that was their game, quietly moving the rights into a shell company they controlled, then enforcing violations to force homeowners to comply. Back at the cabin, Tony found me on the porch, papers spread across the table. They're using us as collateral, I said. Those easements are tied to maintenance bonds. If we resist, they can default and claim emergency assessments. He spat into the dirt. So they fine us, then bill us for their fines. That evening, a black SUV rolled slow past my fence. The same HOA patrol logo gleamed in the sunset. The driver, a tall man in sunglasses, stopped, took a picture, and drove off. I noted the time, 6:47 p.m., plate number 5JQ, partial but clear. My phone buzzed, an email from the HOA compliance desk. Reminder, exterior lighting violation, unshielded bulb type. It was the same porch light my dad installed in 1999. They were escalating. If you've ever faced a board like this, document every notice, every call, every inch they step on your property. It's the only way to beat them in their own language. And if you're anti-HOA, drop your best defense tactic in the comments so others can learn. If you've got a horror story of your own, let's make the lurkers in these HOAs read it here. The next day, I called in backup. My attorney, Rachel Kwan, specialized in municipal and HOA law. Sharp as glass, always carried a thermos of mint tea. I handed her the easement document and my correspondence log. She read silently for 2 minutes, then said, "They can't do this without a supermajority homeowner vote, 2/3 at least. Did you ever get notice of that?" "Never," I said. "Then every lien they threaten is built on an invalid transfer. We'll need proof they used those rights to leverage assessments." We spent the next week digging through the HOA's own filings, minutes, budgets, correspondence obtained under Oregon's right to inspect clause. I learned the board had voted on April 14th, 5 members present, but only 3 were property owners. 2 others were spouses listed under the LLC. The bylaws required all voting members to be deeded owners. That technicality was my crack in their wall. By Thursday, Rachel smiled for the first time. "They recorded this transfer on a Tuesday," she said, tapping the timestamp. "The same day they posted your first violation notice. They needed a test case to enforce authority under the new easement." "So I was the experiment," I said. "Exactly. And once you pay, they establish this precedent. But if we reverse it, the whole structure folds." The plan was clear now. Gather records quietly. File nothing yet. Let them keep sending threats. Each one would strengthen our claim of harassment and selective enforcement. I bought a small audio recorder. Oregon's one-party consent law allowed me to capture my own conversations, and placed it by the cabin phone. Rachel insisted we stay strictly within legal bounds. "The goal isn't revenge," she said. "It's accountability." Tony and I started walking the neighborhood at dusk, quietly telling neighbors what we'd found. Word spread fast. A retired nurse handed me her notice about improper mulch. A widower showed me a $1,000 landscaping inconsistency fine. Each paper bore the same initials, HM. It wasn't just me, it was everyone. As the moon rose, Tony asked, "What's your end game, Mark?" "Justice," I said. Then, after a pause, "And maybe peace." He chuckled softly. "Peace doesn't come free around here." Knowledge. Nugget number 2. Most HOAs are bound by fiduciary duty. They must act in the best interests of the collective membership. When board members profit personally, it's a breach of that duty and grounds for civil removal. 2 days later, Helen herself called. Her tone was honeyed poison. "Mark, I've noticed increased traffic near your property. Some neighbors feel uneasy. We may need to schedule a compliance review." "You mean an inspection?" I said. "A review," she corrected. "Saturday morning, 9 a.m. sharp." I agreed. knowing Rachel would be present. Let them step onto my land. Every second would be documented. When I hung up, I stared at the stack of files under the lamplight, the weight of paper, ink, and proof. This wasn't about a gutter anymore. It was about control, ownership, and the quiet theft of community rights. I flipped open my father's old ledger and wrote a single line across the page. They think they own the valley. Let's remind them who built it. S. Saturday came bright and cold, the kind of morning where frost lingers on fence posts. At 8:58 a.m., a black HOA SUV rolled up my gravel drive, tires crunching like brittle glass. Helen Meyer stepped out in a gray suit far too formal for the setting, clipboard in hand, followed by her compliance officer, a man named Brent, with mirrored sunglasses and a camera on a chest strap. Rachel leaned against my porch rail, calm, sipping mint tea, like this was theater she'd already seen. Helen smiled, rehearsed and plastic. Mr. Collins, we're here to conduct a visual compliance review. You've had ample notice. I have, I said, and I've also provided you with my attorney's request for proof of board authorization for this inspection. She blinked once, then countered smoothly. Section 2.8 of our covenants allows entry for visual observation, no permission required. Rachel stepped forward, voice crisp. Not without a confirmed violation and owner consent. You're not law enforcement. Step past that fence and you're trespassing. Helen hesitated just long enough for Brent's camera to record it. We're just ensuring safety and uniformity, she said, glancing at the lens. Our community values consistency. I kept my tone even. Consistency doesn't mean ownership. They retreated, murmuring to each other before driving off. Rachel exhaled slowly. They'll come back, she said, probably with backup. Over the next week, they did. 3 SUVs, 2 times a day, parking at the fence line, snapping photos of my siding, mailbox, even my dog. Then came the online smear campaign, a neighborhood Facebook post accusing me of threatening board members and operating an unlicensed business. They attached a blurry photo of my truck loaded with lumber, repairs for Tony's porch, not commerce. I saved every screenshot, every timestamp. Knowledge nugget number 3. Under federal fair housing law, Hayes, harassment by a governing body or its agents can constitute discrimination if selectively applied or retaliatory in nature. Documentation converts emotion into evidence. One night, I found a red tag hanging from my gate. Final warning, non-compliance. The date was 1 day before their official hearing. It wasn't a notice. It was intimidation. I sat on the steps, cold air burning my lungs, and felt that fear clawing back. The same helplessness I'd felt sitting beside my father's hospital bed, powerless as decisions were made around him. Control. Always control. That memory hardened into resolve. I opened my laptop and logged into the county's real estate database. Using the LLC name, I traced Silver Pine Holdings backward. Its managing member? Helen Meyer's husband. Its registered agent? The same broker who notarized the quitclaim. That made it a conflict of interest, possibly fraud if board approval hadn't been disclosed. Rachel confirmed it an hour later. They've crossed the fiduciary line, she said. This is your leverage, but not yet. Let them dig deeper. I decided to bait them. I filed a simple, innocuous permit with the county. Repair and replacement of porch railing, identical dimensions, 32 linear feet. Public record. Within 48 hours, the HOA emailed a cease and desist, claiming I'd initiated unauthorized construction. They attached a fine of $2,500, cumulative daily rate of $150. Perfect. Rachel laughed when she saw the document. This is gold, she said. You've got objective proof of lawful permitting and simultaneous false citation. It's a textbook case of bad faith enforcement. Tony whistled low. So what now? We just let them keep hitting you? I nodded. The bigger the hammer, the harder the fall. By late May, the harassment reached its absurd peak. Citations for mailbox paint tone, lawn height variance by ½ inch, and improper flag display on Memorial Day. I kept a wall calendar marking each one with red ink. 21 violations in 30 days. That was my evidence mountain. Now, if we go further, how far should an HOA control your property? Your porch, your paint, your flag. Tell me in the comments where you'd draw the line, or at least like the video if you've ever seen it go too far. Because what came next was the kind of line nobody should ever cross. The night before my hearing, I came home to find the padlock on my gate cut. My mailbox door hung open, the inside scraped and dented. I called the sheriff's office. Deputy Miller arrived 20 minutes later, a quiet man with a notebook and steady hands. "We've had 3 calls from this subdivision in 2 weeks," he said, snapping photos. "Looks coordinated." He filed a report, gave me a case number, #241875, and told me to install cameras. I did, and the first thing they caught was another SUV circling at midnight. Rachel's voice over the phone was calm but electric. "Good. Let them record themselves." She paused. "You're close, Mark. Just don't show your cards yet." I stared at the stack of papers under my desk lamp, the same ones that started this mess. Somewhere under the fluorescent hum, I realized I wasn't fighting for my cabin anymore. I was fighting for the valley my father loved, a place that once belonged to neighbors, not patrol cars. And soon, the HOA would find out that ownership cuts both ways. 2 days after the midnight SUV, I filed a formal owner access request under Section 7.2 of our CCRs, demanding to review the HOA's financial records. They had 5 business days to comply. When that clock hit 0, Helen sent an email dripping with mock professionalism. "Records will be made available upon completion of the current audit cycle, approximately 90 days. Translation: stall until I break." Rachel grinned when she read it. They just violated state transparency law, subsection 4B. You can subpoena these records through small claims discovery once you show financial harm. Let's make sure they keep writing checks. So we did. I mailed my next assessment payment by certified letter, $180 for June, with a notation in blue ink. Payment under protest pending verification of authorized disbursement of community funds. They cashed it. That single deposit tied their acceptance to my protest and made it part of the record. Helen must have realized it too, because the next HOA newsletter labeled me an obstructionist owner. Beneath that, a subtle smear. Ongoing legal distractions increase costs for compliant homeowners. It was a coward's way of rallying the uninformed, but Tony saw through it. "They're nervous," he said, dropping a thermos of coffee on my porch. "I've seen this playbook. They inflate costs, blame the rebel, then quietly funnel money to their projects." He wasn't wrong. By mid-June, I found a line item buried in the board's posted budget. Consulting retainer, $7,500. The payee, Silver Pine Holdings. I printed it twice, highlighted the line in yellow, and slid a copy into my evidence binder. Knowledge nugget number 4. In most states, any HOA expenditure benefiting an entity controlled by a board member or spouse must be disclosed and pre-approved by an independent vote. Failure equals conflict of interest violation, voiding the contract. Now we had them. One more signature, and the house of cards would collapse. But I still needed a stage big enough for the fall. The annual HOA meeting was scheduled for July 12th at the community lodge. Perfect. I'd let them think I was beaten until then. Rachel suggested forming a small ownership trust, an anonymous LLC that could quietly acquire the defaulted utility easement from the county registrar. "Buy their leverage before they realize it's for sale," she said. We moved fast. On June 24th, Valley Restoration LLC was born, registered under her firm's address. The purchase cost me $4,800, money from my father's life insurance remainder. By July 1st, the assignment of easement rights was stamped, sealed, and filed. I didn't tell a soul except Rachel. Reversal number 1 was locked in. Visual beat number 1. I'll never forget the sound of that stamp hitting paper, the deep thunk echoing across her office like a gavel. From that day, I went silent. I mowed my lawn. I waved at patrol cars. I even attended one community barbecue, nodding through Helen's rehearsed speeches about unity. She smiled at me like nothing was coming. Behind my polite grin, I counted days. When July 12th arrived, the sky felt charged. I wore a clean shirt, tucked notebook in hand. Rachel waited in the parking lot with a file box labeled Exhibits A, J. Tony came too, leaning on his cane, eyes bright with mischief. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Positive," I said. Tonight, we take our valley back. Inside, the lodge buzzed with folding chairs and cheap coffee. Around 50 homeowners filled the room. Helen sat at the front, gavel ready, microphone gleaming. "We'll begin with compliance updates," she announced, flipping through her binder. "Several ongoing violations remain unresolved, including Mr. Collins's unapproved structure." I raised my hand. "Point of order," I said evenly. "Before you continue, I'd like to confirm that you possess legal authority over the easement granting access to my parcel." Her eyes flicked up, cautious. "Of course we do. Would you be willing to read the recorded document aloud?" She frowned. "That's not necessary." Rachel stepped forward, voice steady. "For the record, my client holds the current assignment of that easement, executed June 24th and recorded under instrument number 2024-11719. Your association no longer owns the right of inspection or enforcement on that parcel." Gasps rippled through the room. Helen went pale. "That's impossible," she stammered. "No," Rachel said, setting the stamped deed on the P. "Odium. It's public record. You sold the authority you've been abusing, and we purchased it lawfully." The gavel hit the table, but the sound was hollow. "How about you? When an HOA crosses from order into control, what would you do? Fight back quietly or go public? Tell me in the comments. This is where most people flinch." But I wasn't done. The next 10 minutes would flip the entire board upside down. Helen froze at the podium, gavel still raised halfway, like she'd forgotten how gravity worked. Every eye in the room was on her, scanning from the stamped deed to her face. Tony leaned forward, whispering. You could hear a pin drop. Rachel didn't blink. "Since my client now owns the access easement, your patrol vehicles and inspection authority no longer have lawful right of entry. Any further presence will constitute trespass under Oregon Revised Statute 164.245. Helen's throat moved, but no sound came. Brent, the compliance officer, tried to recover. "You can't just buy it like that. It's community property." Rachel turned, precise as a scalpel. "It was community property until your board transferred it without vote to a private LLC. My client purchased it from that LLC through open registry. You should review your own filings before claiming ignorance." Murmurs rippled like wind through dry grass. One neighbor stood. "Is that true? You sold our rights?" Another shouted, "My dues went to that LLC. Who's accountable?" Helen's face flushed crimson. "Everyone calm down. We acted within discretion of the board." Tony interrupted, his voice carrying. "Discretion doesn't mean deception, Helen. You turned our valley into your piggy bank." I let the storm build, then spoke into the microphone. "For months, you've cited us, fined us, and harassed us under an authority you no longer owned. I have time-stamped photos, certified letters, and 21 false notices. Every one of them now counts as unlawful enforcement." Brent lunged for the microphone. "Meeting adjourned," he barked. "Not yet," I said, steady. "There. There's one more voice that needs to be heard." Deputy Miller stepped from the back of the hall, uniform crisp, notebook in hand. "Deschutes County Sheriff's Office," he announced. "We're here to ensure this meeting remains lawful. Mr. Collins has filed reports of trespass and property damage. We're opening an investigation into the HOA's enforcement activities." That did it. The room exploded. Questions, outrage, people standing, some filming on phones. Helen slumped into her chair, whispering something to Brent that never made it to words. Rachel leaned close to me. "That was the validation we needed. You just flipped their narrative." As the crowd spilled outside, the mountain light hit the lodge windows like stage lamps. Tony clapped my shoulder. "That's one hell of a first punch," he said. "It's not over," I answered. "Now we wait for the dominoes." The following week, the domino effect started exactly how Rachel predicted. The Bend Herald ran a front-page piece. Homeowners expose HOA self-dealing scheme in Valley Ridge. Within 2 days, the HOA's insurer suspended liability coverage pending investigation. Without coverage, the board couldn't legally operate. Helen tried to resign quietly, but the county ethics board opened a conflict of interest inquiry first. Brent deleted his Facebook profile the same morning the sheriff subpoenaed his patrol records. It felt surreal, watching power unravel through simple paperwork. Yet under the satisfaction, a quieter ache lingered. My father would have loved seeing this valley freed again, but he wasn't here to see it. One evening, I sat by the cabin fire pit and dropped a copy of the last violation notice into the flames. The paper curled, edges glowing red, then blackened into ash that lifted toward the stars. So here's the debate of the day. If your HOA crossed the line, spied on you, fined you unfairly, or trespassed, shall they face criminal penalties or just removal? Comment your answer. Real accountability starts with us deciding where the punishment fits the abuse. By August, regulators had verified everything. Rachel forwarded me a memo from the State Compliance Office confirming preliminary violations, unauthorized transfer of assets, misuse of authority, selective enforcement, civil penalties pending. I didn't cheer, I just breathed. Reversal number 1 had hit, but the cleanup, the reform, was still ahead. I didn't want a scorched earth. I wanted a system that couldn't hurt anyone again. Rachel agreed. You have leverage now, she said. You can crush them in court, or you can trade that leverage for reform. What kind of reform? Term limits, open meetings, independent audits, a community charter that locks transparency into law. I nodded. Then that's the deal. Visual beat number 2. I pictured it already. A meeting table under bright light, a deed stamped clean, and the sound of a pen signing away years of quiet corruption. The valley deserved that sound. The next morning, Rachel called at 7:12 a.m. sharp. Her tone was clipped, all business. Mark, Helen's attorney reached out. They're offering a settlement, quiet dissolution of the current board, no admission of wrongdoing, and a confidentiality clause. I laughed, the sound dry as the valley air. So they want to disappear and keep the system intact. Exactly, which means they're scared. That's leverage, she said. But if we take it, nothing changes for the next family they target. I looked out the window. Mist rolled through the pines, soft and ghost-like. Somewhere down the road, Tony's old truck sputtered awake. We don't bury this, I said. We fix it. Over the next week, Rachel drafted a reform proposal line by line, while I gathered signatures from the valley's homeowners. Every name was a small act of rebellion. A nurse, a teacher, a young couple saving for their first house. Even the retired judge who'd once chaired the HOA in its early days signed with a shaky but sure hand. By the time I reached the last mailbox, we had 37 signatures, just over 2/3, the same threshold the bylaws required for any major amendment. Knowledge nugget number 5. In most states, amendments to HOA governing documents require a supermajority of the membership, often 2/3, making grassroots reform possible if owners coordinate properly and verify procedural notice. We set the hearing for August 29th. Helen's lawyer tried to postpone, citing ongoing investigations, but Rachel countered with procedural clock deadlines. They had 30 days to respond or the petition defaulted into effect. The silence that followed was our confirmation. Still, the retaliation didn't vanish. Brent resurfaced under a new title, Community Safety Consultant, and began issuing anonymous emails, warning of non-compliant gatherings. One evening, as I returned from town, I found my mailbox door hanging by a single screw again. The old fear stirred, but this time I didn't feel alone. 3 porch lights flicked on across the road, neighbors watching, cameras rolling. The bullies had lost their shadows. That night, Tony came by carrying a brown envelope. Pulled this from the county docket, he said, tossing it on my table. Inside were scanned checks, payments from HOA funds to Silver Pine Holdings, totaling $18,200 over 9 months. Rachel can subpoena the bank records next, he said. I stared at the numbers. They were bleeding us dry. Not anymore, Tony said. You stopped the drain. We spent the next hour building what Rachel called the Valley File, a color-coded binder with sections for every violation, letter, and record. Tabs labeled Evidence AJ. When we were done, the thing weighed nearly 10 pounds. Visual beat number 3. As the final page snapped into its ring, the sound echoed through the cabin, sharp, metallic, final. It felt like closing a trap around years of manipulation. The hearing day came warm and windless. The community hall smelled of coffee and fresh printed agendas. Reporters lined the back wall, pens ready. Helen sat at the front, flanked by her lawyer and 2 remaining board members. Gone was the smug smile. In its place, a tremor around her jaw. I stepped to the microphone, folder in hand. "This isn't about revenge," I said. "It's about rebuilding trust where it was stolen. My father helped raise this cabin, and every person here built a piece of this valley. We deserve leadership that serves, not rules." A murmur of agreement rolled through the room. Rachel distributed printed copies of the Reform Charter, 2-term limit for all board members, independent annual audit of all funds, public posting of meeting minutes within 10 days, open records compliance with state statutes, elimination of discretionary fines without verified inspection reports, community access charter preserving common areas and easements. When Helen's lawyer objected, Rachel raised a single page, the notarized deed of easement still bearing my name. "Without this document, your authority evaporates," she said. "You can either sign this reform into policy or face full civil exposure for conflict of interest and misuse of authority. Your choice." Helen's hand trembled over the pen. I watched her eyes move between the deed and her lawyer's face. Then, slowly, she signed. The sound of the pen scratching paper felt like wind through pine needles. Quiet, inevitable, cleansing. So tell me this. When corruption folds under proof, should we let the people responsible walk away if they help fix the damage? Or should justice still come with penalties? Drop your verdict below. Because what happened next blurred that line more than I ever expected. The board signed the reform document that afternoon, 6 pages, witnessed by Deputy Miller and notarized on site, by the county clerk. The moment it became official, a strange quiet settled over the valley. No more patrol cars idling at night, no more violation slips fluttering on fences, just the hum of summer insects and the distant roll of thunder. Rachel stayed behind after the crowd dispersed, sorting through the copies. "It's done," she said softly. "You not only won, you changed the rules." Tony leaned on his cane, watching Helen leave the hall through the side door, her briefcase hanging low. "You think she'll face charges?" Rachel shrugged. "The ethics board and insurance carrier will handle that. They'll seek restitution before it ever hits a courtroom." Over the next week, the domino collapse spread wider. The HOA's insurer canceled its director's officer's policy outright, citing material misrepresentation. Without that coverage, the remaining board members resigned one by one. The county ethics office released a statement confirming findings of self-dealing and procedural violations, recommending removal and restitution. The news cycle spun fast. Interviews, calls from other neighborhoods, invitations to speak about grassroots governance reform. I didn't feel like a crusader. I just wanted my valley back. The sheriff's department confirmed Helen and Brent would face misdemeanor charges for trespass and harassment. When reporters asked if I'd testify, I said yes, then immediately felt the weight of that decision. Justice meant telling the story one more time, reliving every violation, every late-night knock on the door, but it also meant closure. Late one evening, I walked the bridge by my cabin. The water below caught the orange glow of sunset, same as when my father used to sit there with me, fishing line slack, coffee thermos between us. I whispered, "We fixed it, Dad." The wind answered in a low rush through the pines. A few days later, the county's public affairs office sent a formal notice. Valley Ridge HOA placed under state oversight for 24 months. The community would elect a new interim board under the reformed charter. Rachel forwarded the message with a single line. "This is your legacy now." I didn't respond right away. I watched Tony repair the flagpole in his yard, same one they'd fined him for. Kids rode bikes past the old patrol post. A retired teacher opened a lemonade stand at the corner. Small things, ordinary again. For those watching, what's your take? Should state regulators step in to supervise HOAs that repeatedly abuse authority? Or should homeowners always handle reform internally? Write your opinion below. These debates shape the next law that protects you. One night, Rachel stopped by unannounced. "You've got media requests piling up," she said, half grinning. "Maybe share your story once, so other communities know how to use the law instead of fear." I poured her coffee. "One story, then I'm done. I'm not turning this into a movement." She raised an eyebrow. "Too late, you already did." We laughed quietly, the kind of laughter that comes after surviving a storm. Outside, rain began to fall. Steady, rhythmic, washing dust off the roads. I left the porch light on, not out of habit, but out of gratitude. The following morning, I got a letter from the State Department of Consumer and Business Services. Inside was a clean summary. Findings substantiated. Enforcement pending consent decree. Attached was a note from the investigator, handwritten in the margin. You documented everything perfectly. This will set precedent. It hit me then. What started as one man defending a cabin had become a blueprint. A legal, human, patient blueprint. And the valley, once divided by patrol cars and fines, now had neighbors gathering to plan a community day, the first in 5 years. Whilst that's where the story should have ended, but one more decision lingered, the offer of a statewide advisory role on HOA oversight. Rachel said it could turn my experience into policy. Tony said, go for it so no one else eats the same dirt. I wasn't sure. I just knew the valley was healing, and for the first time in years, I could breathe without waiting for the next envelope. The letter sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I opened it again. The state's offer wasn't flashy, just a stipend and a long list of towns that needed help rewriting their HOA codes. But it felt weightier than any paycheck I'd ever earned. My father used to say, legacy wasn't what you build, it's what keeps standing after you stop holding it up. Maybe that's why I signed. When the new board elections rolled around, I didn't run. I helped set up folding chairs and served coffee instead. Watching my neighbors debate landscaping budgets and playground repairs felt strangely satisfying, people talking like equals again. The air smelled of fresh pine and freedom from fear. The gavel no longer sounded like a threat. It sounded like a beginning. Helen's case ended quietly. Probation, restitution, and a 5-year ban from serving on any governing body. Brent pled to a lesser charge, community service included. The insurance payout reimbursed every homeowner who'd been fined under false pretenses. Seeing those checks delivered, with their exact dollar amounts typed clean, $2,500, $900, $150, was like watching justice tally itself. Rachel called that evening. You did what most people only talk about, she said. You turned paperwork into protection. I told her, all I did was keep the receipts. She laughed. That's how the law wins. A week later, the county invited me to speak at a public reform summit. I stood behind a podium in a hall that smelled of old varnish and microphones still warm from the last speaker. Accountability, I said, isn't born from anger. It's born from record-keeping, persistence, and neighbors who remember each other's names. The applause was polite at first, then grew. Slow, steady, like rain starting on a roof. Afterward, Tony met me on the steps outside, a new flag folded under his arm. Thought you'd want this for the cabin, he said. Same kind your dad flew. I took it carefully. You sure you don't want to keep it? Nah, he grinned. You earned it. Besides, I like the new rules better than the old pole. We drove back as dusk settled over the valley. The repaired bridge gleamed faintly under the porch light. I climbed the steps, mounted the flag, and let it unfurl into the wind. For a long minute, I just listened. To the creak of boards, to the hush of the trees, to the silence that comes after noise has finally worn itself out. If you believe I fought the right way, and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend. Subscribe so future stories reach you first. And if you know someone facing the same fight, share this, because learning the law is how we make peace louder than power. That's on us. In the weeks that followed, Valley Ridge held its first community day. Kids painted fences, elders planted new trees by the creek, and the lodge wall displayed a framed copy of the Reform Charter. The local news called it the valley that rebuilt itself. As for me, I still fix small things, porch rails, mailboxes, maybe trust. Sometimes I hear a knock late at night and still tense, half expecting another notice. Then I remember, those days are gone. The valley is ours again. And somewhere out there, another homeowner is opening a letter J, just like I did, a fine, a warning, a spark. If they find this story, maybe they'll know where to start.